September 11, 2001 consisted of 4 coordinated attacks that killed 2,996 people and injured over 6,000 others. There was at least $10 billion in property and infrastructure damage and a total of $3 trillion in overall costs. The attacks were done by the Islamic terrorist group Al-Qaeda with the use of airplanes, or so we think. There have been many conspiracy theories that have come along with the event of 9/11, but the concept that the towers were in fact not brought down by planes, but instead were brought down by bombs has a large amount of supporting data. We will be discussing this topic by digging deeper into the collapse of Tower 7 and how the plane crashes by themselves would have not been able to create the impact that they did that day. We are first going to begin with the Forgotten Tower. Unbeknown to many, the Twin Towers were not the only towers that collapsed September 11, 2001. Tower 7, the tower that did not stand quite as tall as the others, collapsed 7 hours after the initial incident. Fortunately, everyone had been evacuated. Jonathan Barnett from the Fire Protection Engineering had a few things to say about the event.
We were surprised that Tower 7 collapsed, we being the team that investigated what occurred that day. There was some damage to Tower 7 caused by the debris that hit from Tower 1, but the damage was certainly not similar in scope and magnitude to what was caused by the aircraft hitting Towers 1 and 2.
It later came out that bombs were indeed implanted in Tower 7. John Kerry, U.S. Secretary of State, specifically said that the bombs put into Tower 7 were used in a controlled fashion to bring down the building. Now, if they used bombs on Tower 7, could they have used the bombs for the Twin Towers? This brings us to our next focal point. The evidence from the incident did not match up with the impact of a plane crashing into a building. We took the time to interview Jeff King, who is an MIT engineer of research. He immediately noticed that the event was not spontaneous. He specifically stated that there were squibs which represent little puffs of smoke essentially coming out of the building, which were clearly a sign of controlled demolition. King also made several other arguments after viewing the film. There were no plausible scenarios for the collapse. The physical evidence was quickly destructed, and they were only able to acquire about 200 pieces from the building, making it very hard for engineers to partake in a detailed analysis. The smoke that came from the building was very dark, which was a prime indicator for the fact that the fire was cool and it was inefficient, therefore it was not hot enough to create enough damage to make the building collapse. And finally, the core beams that support the building were strong enough to support the impact of an airplane crash. Therefore, the building should not have collapsed due to the material and the strength of the beams. There were many people who were directly impacted by the explosions that took place in the lobby. Here is a reenactment of a firefighter's testimony that was impacted firsthand.
I was in the lobby when the third explosion went off and the lobby collapsed on us. It was horrible, and there were indeed 3 explosions. The first one, and the second one, and the third one were all after the fire had been started for a while.
So, for the final question, we must ask, were the towers of the 9/11 event brought down by bombs or by planes? We know that the looked-over Tower 7 was indeed brought down using controlled demolition, and that evidence coming from both witnesses and engineers support that the building coming down was due to explosions. Now, to answer this final question, it is up to you to do the final research.